Welcome back to For the Win podcast, the greatest gaming podcast in the world. Let's get into what's happened this week in gaming. Halo fans all over the world are invited to sing in the world's biggest, hopefully, Halo chant. Participants will record themselves singing the Halo chant and send it to GameChoir. Then GameChoir will broadcast the final piece on August 17th. And today, we have a special guest here to talk about it. You've heard of John Williams, Copeland, Gershwin, but ladies and gentlemen, no one holds a candle to this great American composer. He wrote the soundtrack to our childhood, composed some of the best-selling video game soundtracks of all time. He's a husband, father, and the reason all our parents forced us to eat Flintstones chewable vitamins. Yes. Put your hands together for Marty O'Donnell.
Thank you,
gentlemen.
Thank you. Well, hey, first of all, thanks for having me on. Second of all, you said ladies and gentlemen. Are there ladies that listen to your podcast? Because that's great. Good job.
My wife gives it a thumbs up every week. She gives it a thumbs up. She doesn't listen to
it. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate coming on, be able to talk about GameChoir, and everybody should go to GameChoir.com, and it's really easy to do. Just sing the monk chant, which you've probably done with your friends a bazillion times, and just do it. Doesn't matter how good it is. They'll make it good. They've told me that. And I've sent mine in already, and I'm sure it's going to be fine. Jen Taylor sent hers in. So sing with me and Cortana. I think Steve Downs, Master Chief, is going to sing. I'm still working on it. He doesn't like to do that, but all he has to do is sing the low drone, which any guy could do. It's a little low, but just one note. That's all you got to do.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I saw you do an interview with the two guys who are kind of heading up the choir.
Yeah.
And what made you want to kind of just put your stamp of I mean, obviously it's your song, but what about this project in particular excites you to be a part of it and kind of rally people to be a part of it?
Well, just so I don't get in trouble, technically it's Microsoft's song.
Okay. Good to know.
Yes, I did write it, but so yeah, Ben England from I think it's called Choir of the Earth, and Mark Strachan just contacted me and said that they had this idea about this new online choral thing, which is going to be GameChoir. So they're going to do all the best choral music from game soundtracks and have online participation. People be able to sing and sing together and do all this great stuff. And the very first one they wanted to do was the Halo chant, which is great for me. I thought that was wonderful. So when they told me that's what they wanted to do, I said, sure, let me know what I can do to help. So, and here I am.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you mentioned that you don't have to sing, because I saw one of the top comments on their kind of trailer video for it was someone saying, well, this is the greatest soundtrack of my life, so I guess I'll donate my egregious voice to the choir. Are they going to fix people's voices? Can anyone who loves a song really sing?
Well, so there's such a thing called a mix. So, there's auto-tune, there's vocal line, there's lots of different tricks that you can do to make people's pitch better and to make things line up better. And then there might be files that are sent in that are almost impossible, and you just push those down in the mix. So it's like they go to the way far back of the room, but they're still there. Like they're there in spirit. So that's why I think everybody should contribute, because then it really could be the biggest Halo choir of all time. You're not going to hear your own voice. I'm not going to hear my voice. It's a choral, it's choir. Like everybody's mixed together.
Yeah,
Some people might be a little less mixed than others.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Sure.
That makes sense. Just as one.
Yeah.
Unison.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey guys, if you are listening to this and you haven't submitted yet, make sure you go submit, be a part of history. I know I'm going to submit mine, and I want to be a part of this. Nothing like this in Halo history has ever been done before.
That is true.
As far as I'm aware.
No, that is true.
So I'm excited to be a part of Halo history and
so
get involved.
over the years, I have done video games live, and which is the live orchestral concerts of game music. And whenever I'm there to do Halo music, the very first thing we do is sort of conduct the entire audience in singing the chant. And that always sounds great. Everybody sings, and there's enough people who are singing well in the audience that it always sounds good. So this will be the first time a really big group has been recorded all singing the Halo chant. So I'm looking forward to it. And you still have plenty of time to go to gamechoir.com, watch the little tutorial. Ben England does a great job sort of holding your hand, telling you how to do it, giving you encouragement as you're doing it. And then he basically says, don't even listen to what you did. Just hit,
Just
record and just submit. Don't worry about it. It's all going to be good.
That's amazing. I love it. Can we shoot the breeze about some more music stuff?
Sure. Shoot the breeze about anything you want. If you guys supposedly grew up on Halo, then you might have a question or two. It's fine.
Yeah. So you've talked a lot in past interviews about the power of the human voice.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to me, your wife being a choral director and how you would, when making music for Halo, there'd be moments where you're like, you know what, we just need a little more connection. We need to add the human voice to this. And so you would add in a layer of just, falsetto or something like that. And my question is, what do you think, like in regards to that? And so many of your scores, like we've been listening to your music for ages, have so much emotion. And even like a couple years ago when you just released a little piano YouTube video of you playing a Christmas song. And it was just like, man, your arrangement there's just so much emotion in the music. What do you think separates a good video game score from a great one? Like, what's that X factor that you feel tips the scale from like, that's a score that's pretty good, but I won't remember it, to this makes me feel things and I'm going to listen to it forever?
Well, of course, I have my own, theory about stuff like this, and I appreciate it if you put some of my scores in that great category. I thank you for that.
Absolutely.
My approach is always the idea that melody is a huge factor. If there's a melody that connects with people, and perhaps the way orchestrated or the color of the instruments or whatever is going on around it, but if there's a melody that will connect with people and stick in their heads and then connect with the emotions of the moment when they first hear it, that is something that I think is like really, really important, and will end up, like you said, you'll remember something. You won't just remember that you had a good time. You'll also remember something a little more, on a deeper level. So I've always felt melodies are amazingly important. I don't know how to explain some of the other stuff that might happen. It's just, it's choices that I enjoy myself. I was watching something. It was, believe it or not, I think it was something Truman Capote was saying about In Cold Blood. I was watching the documentary thing. But he said that as an artist, you can't make people feel something if you don't feel it first. And every piece of music that I've ever done that I end up, that I'm happy with or I like, at some point during the composition process, I felt a strong emotion. And sometimes it's something that I was going for something different and something else came up and I'm like, okay, this isn't going to be right for this situation, but I'm going to hang on to this and use it some other place. But if I don't feel some sort of strong emotion when I'm writing something, I keep working at it until I do. So now you don't necessarily feel the strong emotion the whole time you're producing it. Eventually you get sort of technical and analytical and all the rest of it. But I always know that there was a moment in time when something actually, raised the hairs on my arm. I got a shiver in the back of my neck, or something made me feel like this is legitimately emotionally impactful. So there you go.
One of the things that like my dad helped me and my brother grow up on was just a wide variety of music. And he's a professional musician, band teacher for 30 years. So he is all in this world.
Okay.
Did you want to say something?
Well, no, I was just going to say because you immediately said something about using falsetto, and not everybody knows even what that is. Yeah. So I thought, okay, you have a musical background. I get it. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of my favorite artists are not just ones that play music, but they really put like their soul on display. Like you see a piece of who they are, and you see that in someone like Ray Charles, right? Oh, yeah. Like he didn't just sing; he sang, and like it was everything, right? And someone who reminds me of that kind of our generation is John Mayer.
Oh yeah,
he doesn't play guitar; he plays his heart and soul. Like you see his heart and soul come out when he performs.
Yeah, I agree.
There's no other way. And he has a unique connection to Halo. And I'm just curious, what was the process like with John Mayer getting him to play in Halo 2, like in the epilogue? And if I remember right, that was kept, and maybe it still is. I don't know. Maybe we need to cut this or something. But there was a decision made to just keep that secret, not tell people it was him, and just leave it. What was that process like, getting him to do that? How was that? Do you have any stories from that experience? I love John Mayer, and when you listen to that song now, I didn't know it was him as a kid, but I listened to it back now after listening to John Mayer for the last 15 years. I'm like, oh, that's his tone.
Right.
That's him. That's obviously him. Like, I don't know how anyone didn't know that was him. It's so obvious in the way he plays, and his tone, and the notes he decides to use, and everything. So I was wondering if you could share about that.
Yeah, and I might go into more detail than I ever have. I'm glad you're a John Mayer fan because I can talk about this. So Halo 1 came out and was really successful, and tons of people were playing it. And all of a sudden, we at Bungie were getting requests from all sorts of people who wanted to come visit the studio. Hayden Christensen, who's the guy that played oh gosh, forget it. I'll remember it later. He was that real nerd guy with the curly hair and the glasses, and it was like in that high school movie, and he danced at the end. Yeah, Napoleon Dynamite. That guy,
John Heater.
Yeah, John Heater came over. And that was a blast. So, I mean, we had a bunch of people come through the studio, including Bill Gates and Steve Ballmer and people like that. But Incubus, Nile Rodgers, of course, Steve Vai. And then somebody told me that John Mayer was interested. Oh, Justin Timberlake came by too. That was a lot of fun. He came into my studio and played the piano.
Classic.
They were all loving Halo, as Halo ended up being something that they would take on the road and play between shows and stuff. So, and it was very satisfying to have fellow musicians, especially musicians who were successful, talk about how much they enjoyed the music. So that was a lot of fun. But I heard that John Mayer was interested, and I'm like, I don't even know who John Mayer is. This is 2002, maybe 2000. It might be 2003 at this point. And so somebody said, well, John Mayer wants to come visit the studio and, meet you. And I'm like, I don't know who John Mayer is. So I remember I'm really old now, but I was old then. So I listened to what John Mayer had done, and your body is Wonderland, right. Okay, it was like, and I knew the girls were hot for him, and I was like, okay. But I gave it a little bit more of a chance. I listened to a couple of songs on that album, whatever that album was, you probably remember. But I was like struck by not so much the songs. The songs were good. They were good pop songs, and I enjoyed what I was listening to. But I thought, I don't know how this is going to fit into Halo. But I listened to the guitar player and I'm like, well, man, whoever his guitar player is really good and tasty. And I looked a little closer and it was like, oh, that's John Mayer. So we got on the phone and I basically told him that. And he said, what do you mean pop? And I was like, oh no, dude, I'm sorry. No, he goes, he started laughing and he goes, no, I was just pulling your leg. I know it's pop. I said, okay, well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know how pop music's going to fit into Halo, but I love your guitar playing and I love your tone. I love the way you think. And he says, that's perfect. He says, let's do this. Send me anything you want. I'll add guitar to it. I'll send it back to you. And if you want to use it any place, just go ahead. And I said, that sounds great. And he says, but the condition is we can't tell my agent or my manager or anything else because lawyers will get involved, and then everything gets complicated. He didn't want that. And I said, well, that sounds great. I like things that are less complicated. And then he said, look, number one, I want to be able to visit the studio and see how you guys do what you do, not just music, but game design. I want to play Halo 2 before anybody else does. And I want my name to be in the credits as my gamer tag. So special thanks to my gamer tag name so that when I'm playing with my buddies and the credits come up, I'll be able to see, there I am.
That's amazing.
He thought it was cool because nobody else in the world would know that it's him. So we kept that a secret for, I think, 15 years. I never asked permission if it's okay to talk to people about it, but I figure by this point it's like everybody knows. It's come out. I'm sure he's happy that people know. I'm sure he's got new management. Nobody cares. Microsoft still, who knows? Microsoft still might sue me for doing something. Yeah. But anyway, that was really fun. That was just a guy who loved playing the game, wanted the same thing that you guys have, which is you want bragging rights with your buddies on the couch playing co-op or playing, multiplayer. And that's what he wanted to do. But what he contributed was super tasty. I loved it. And I came back years later. I think it was just a couple of years ago where I found all the takes that he had done and I put them together. I think you used some of that, didn't you, in your video?
Yeah, it's the opening. That song in particular is just like, oh, it's so good. So I'm like, opening, start of the video, let's set the tone right away, what this is about.
Good choice. Nice music, like I said.
It's brilliant. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, what I love about what John did is, which is what all good musicians do. Like as a composer, you can do a lot yourself, especially now with technology and stuff. But the reason you hire other musicians is because you want them to bring something of themselves to your creation and then make it better. So what John did, and all the good musicians that I've had over the years, they've all done something for my composition or our compositions and made it better than we would have thought of. So that's what you want to see.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's beautiful. I love it. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. That's hilarious. And I'm definitely going to go back and look up the credits.
You know what? It's like that's actually the sad thing is that I can't find the credits like on the Master Chief Collection. But somebody needs to look at the original Halo 2 credits, look under special thanks. And somebody's name will stick out. It looks like a gamer tag.
Guitar Master 3000
something like that.
Oh my gosh, that's great. So speaking of, you were talking about the success of Halo 1. And my question is, what's a greater challenge in your mind? Attempting to compose a follow-up to the global sensation, that's Halo 1, right? You're sitting there. It's like Halo 1 is finished. You're going to start on Halo 2. You're in the shadow of that. Or is it a greater challenge to try and save 20 hours worth of recordings from a studio that's burning to the ground? Because for some of our listeners who don't know, and maybe you can share a bit of the story, at your previous studio a long time ago, apparently it was burning down, and you literally had to grab recordings to try and save them for a game that you were currently working on.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing story. It's not quite accurate. The building was no longer burning. It was the next morning after the day where it did burn, and it was just a shell of a building. Just the brick walls were standing. And I had actually the night before, it was like 20 below zero in Chicago, so it was all the water that the firemen were pouring on the building had frozen into these huge ice sculptures all over the place, and the building was no longer burning. But I tried to get up the back stairs, and they stopped like at the second floor, and there was just this gaping hole above me. I remember seeing a giant air conditioner unit from the roof just hanging by icicles. It was hanging in midair above my head, and I thought, this might not be the best idea. So,
yeah.
I turned around, came back the next morning. I had a friend who owned a landscaping company. He had a big cherry picker, and he actually hoisted me up to the third floor window in the front. And I went in there and was able to find and recover some, 20 hours of recording for a game that we were working at the time called Subterracore. Giant hit. But I'm glad I saved all that. It was really an interesting game, and it was a lot of fun to work on, and we had so much recording on it that if I had lost all that stuff, I don't know what would have happened. The game might not have ever shipped. So, I wasn't fighting the fire and saving recordings, but I did find. You guys are too young to even know what these are. Jazz cartridges. So each jazz cartridge was a gigabyte. So I had 20 hours of recording on all these jazz cartridges in their case. And they were all sealed in a block of ice because of all the ice, all the water that had been poured on the building. So I chopped the ice out, grabbed these jazz cartridges. And at that point, Bungie had moved in basically across the street from our building. They were watching the building burn the day before. So I went over to Bungie with this stack of frozen jazz cartridges, and we dried them out with a hairdryer and stuck them in a machine. And we had one shot, because once they spun up and you got the data off of them, they would just stop working. And I was able to get all the data off at Bungie, even though I was just a freelancer at that time for Bungie. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was a brutal situation. So.
Yeah, and that was before things would just be backed up online.
Oh yeah, so no such thing. I mean, out. A gigabyte was a huge amount of data, and these cartridges, they were they were large. They were these large, thick things, and you needed a jazz drive, and and you got a whole gigabyte, which was just amazing. Whoa. So, yeah, and there was no cloud, there was no nothing. There was just media. So I would say, in terms of true difficulty, that was probably harder than working on Halo 2. Although Halo 2 by the end was a thing unto itself. It was pretty tough.
Yeah. I actually went back and listened to that Subterracore album.
Did you? Okay.
I listened to the music, and because I'd never heard of it before, and I went back and listened to it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds like a precursor to Halo.
Yeah.
With the drum, with the drums and the cadence and the the doom doom. I was like, oh dude, yeah, this is totally Marty. I was like, this is great, and even just the ethereal, I don't know if that's the right word, just the
ethereal
ambient stuff. Ethereal, that's it. The ethereal stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, it sounds like I'm in some weird Covenant spaceship. I could see the fingerprints and the colors of your just early days already reflected in that stuff. So I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, that is cool. I mean, you could also say that we're sort of one trick ponies. Like our ideas are
Yeah.
a little bit similar as we go, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool. So, this is kind of more for our listeners and people who are interested kind of in music composing, the industry. How would you encourage someone who's a composer or a musician who's not currently in the video game industry, but maybe has the skills, has the abilities, maybe even has like a catalog of just scores and things they've done put together, but doesn't know like where to look or how to get into the industry? Because I think there's such immense value in what you and other composers do, but it's not really, to me, it doesn't seem like there's a clear track, or like where do you even go to get into something like this? Could you maybe shed some light on where the industry's at now and how someone might, like, if they're passionate about it, get involved?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. You sort of skimmed over the, like, if they're good, like it takes a long time to get good. So like if you're not practicing, if you don't have an instrument, if you're not getting some education, other people are going to beat you out at that level. So make sure you're a good musician. You understand what it is to be a composer. Maybe you've got some education, whether it's taking some theory classes in high school or going to music school for college. And then at some point you have to understand digital audio workstations. So there's many different kinds of, with DAWs, they're called. So you have to understand that side. And then if you really are interested in interactive and game production with music and sound, you have to learn some of the middleware like Wise, Fmod. Unreal 5 now has it's the audio engine in Unreal 5 is spectacular. So you need to actually learn that stuff, because the people you'll be competing with will know that stuff. At that point, I don't think there is a path that everybody can easily follow. I talked to Austin Wintory about this. I've talked to a bunch of different composers in the game industry, and we all have a different way we got in. But the common element is almost always the same, which is always say yes. So make friends. Somebody's going to come up to you and say, hey, I'm an artist, and there's this friend who's a programmer, and I'm doing this game jam over the weekend, and we need someone who can handle audio and music. Just say, yes, I'll do that. I mean, if you don't have a track record yet, that is your best ticket in, is to start building a portfolio and making friends who are not doing identical work that you are doing. And by the way, there's not that many people who are good and competent at doing and producing, good audio. So if you have that, say yes to anybody who asks you. Maybe they're like, hey, I'm doing a trailer for a friend of mine. I'm editing this little YouTube video and I need music. I mean, just say yes to everything. And if somebody says, hey, I need, a hammered dulcimer to play this thing, say, yes, I can do that. And then quickly go and find out what a hammered dulcimer is. And never say, oh, I don't know what that is. Don't say no. Just say yes.
Yeah.
And,
that's great.
You'll, like Austin, this is Austin's saying. He says, the best thing is you do something like that, and later on those people end up having some really cool job, and they come back to you, and then you're in on some big, cool project. The worst thing that can happen is you have friends. You've made some friends. So if that's the worst thing that can happen, then that's, I mean, frankly, there are other worse things that can happen, but let's be real positive. I mean, it's,
yeah,
there's a bunch of people your age out there who are also starting out and, need help, and you should jump in and do it.
Yeah. Speaking of friends, just random thought jumped into my head. How many of the old like Bungie crew, I know you guys like went through war together for 1, 2, and 3 like for so long. How many of the old Bungie crew do you still talk to regularly? Do you guys have like a once a year Thanksgiving where you're like get together, relive the memories, have a LAN party?
Yeah,
like
that sounds like a
you
great
guys
idea. We should do that. Yeah, the original Bungie crew. And I could probably name everybody in the credits of Halo 1. I think there was 36 people working on that.
That's amazing.
Halo 2, maybe did we get up to 70 maybe? I don't remember. But the teams, that was in that era of game development where everybody knew everybody. Everybody wore multiple hats. Like nobody just did one specialty. Like everybody had more than one thing that they could do. So that original crew, we're like a band of brothers. We could get on the phone, get on a Zoom call, and immediately pick up where we left off.
That's awesome.
It's a little bit shocking how few of those people are still at the current Bungie or 343. But yeah, I see these people. I started a game company with Jamie and Jamie Griesmer, who was the guy who said 30 seconds of fun. So he and I stayed together, and I'm still part owner of Highwire Games, and they just released 6 Days in Fallujah, which I helped start working on a few years ago. And then Paul Bertone and Joe Staten and Marcus Lato and Paul Russell, and there's just so many of these guys that will still get together and talk. I think Paul Russell's had a birthday party a few times, and we've gotten a bunch of the old crew together to celebrate his birthday. But yeah, I like the idea of some sort of annual Thanksgiving OG Bungie thing. That'd be fun. As a matter of fact, Alex Seropian, who was one of the founders of Bungie back in Chicago, has a podcast now, and so he's interviewed me. He's just interviewed Jamie Griesmer, and he just opened up a new studio. He was working on some sort of Battlefield game with EA, and now he's got his own company again. So we're all still hanging around, except for me. I'm I'm drifting over to the sides.
You're drifting. You have a really great video. I kind of stalked your YouTube. I mean, I've been following you for a while, but
excuse me, I took a lot of stuff off of YouTube. But go ahead.
I saw a video of you when you gave your daughters, I don't know if it's for Christmas or what, but you gave them iPods. And it was it's actually an incredible video because your two daughters are like opening it and they're like trying to be nice, but they don't know what it is because an iPod had never existed before. So you don't like say a lot. You're kind of waiting for them to get it. And I think maybe it's your wife trying to explain it to them. And it's such a revolutionary thing that they're like, wait, so all our CDs go inside of this? Like what? How does it work? But it's so small. And I just thought that was so interesting because we've now come full circle, and most young adults, maybe even their age at that, like if they're their age at the time, they wouldn't even know what an iPod is because we don't use the word iPod anymore.
Right.
We use iPhone.
Right.
We don't even talk about iPods. So
they'll think did you just mean iPad?
Yeah. And it's like the evolution of technology happens so fast, and there's a lot of talk. This question's going towards AI. And I would just be curious what your thoughts as a seasoned veteran kind of in this space in particular, what's your thoughts on AI and creating music, and what kind of role do you see it playing in a decade, in 20 years, if any?
Yeah. So there, everybody has a time and a season, and I feel like I was able to create during a period of time where I could take it. When I first got into doing music, I was on the cutting edge of using, synthesizers and digital technology and home recording that was a little bit better than when the people knew. And I was able to, parlay that into a successful business. And And then one of the reasons I even shot that video of my daughters is because I knew when I bought these, we were bought iPods, fresh off the shelf, and nobody knew really what they were. My daughters were not saying, "Dad, please get me an iPod for Christmas." They were not, they didn't know what it was. So I shot them because I knew it was going to be funny. And you can hear my wife getting a little frustrated. Marty, just tell them what these things do. And I somehow could see that 20 years from now, that would be funny. Anyway, what I've seen happen, for example, like the Jazz cartridge, and then you have. I'll still remember with the first time we got an actual 1 gigabyte hard drive for our studio. This was before cartridges. Whoa. It was a 1 gigabyte hard drive. It took up 2 rack spaces in the studio. It was fan cooled.
Jeez.
And I was able to say, "Hey, everybody, we are a cutting edge happening studio because we have a full gigabyte of stuff to record on." And then, voiceover artists give me, a stick with their demo on it for free now. And it's, a terabyte. Yeah. And I mean, it's just insane. Or like I know, I got one of these the other day. I had to get a SIM card. I will get to AI in a minute. You ask me on here and I tell stories. Okay. So this came in the mail, right? Because I haven't done SIM cards in a long time. And I took this out and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at how small this is. And then I thought, oh, wait, this isn't how small it is. It's this small. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe it. It's like a gazillion gigabytes and it's this small. And I tried to put it in whatever the device I had and it was too big. And then I realized, oh no, this is some large adapter for some old fashioned stuff. You open this up and out falls something that looked like my baby fingernail. And I'm like, I can just blow on that and it'll disappear. And I don't know how many, is it half a terabyte? I don't even remember what it is. Yeah. So as an old person,
it's wild.
Seeing the hugely accelerated technology happening, yes, I am looking at what AI is doing and I'm petrified. Because for one, I'm not going to stay on that cutting edge anymore. I'm not going to stay up there trying to figure out how to parlay this into business. So I know other people younger than me are going to be doing that. And I think it's going to go really fast. And I think some amazing stuff's going to happen. But at the same time, probably something important will go away and we won't realize that it's gone away until later. You don't know what it's gone, what you've lost till it's gone. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. That happened with drum machines. All of a sudden, everybody was using drum machines, 40 years ago. And then, you decide to record something with a live drummer and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. Why, we walked away from that. Even writing music down is a lost art. And there are things that come out of the process of physically writing music down that you shouldn't ever lose. And I think something will happen like that with AI generated music. There will probably be a sameness to it. Individual composers might sort of atrophy. Their creativity might just sort of get frozen. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think something amazing will happen and then something horrific will happen. That's my prediction.
Yeah, that's a good prediction. I don't think anything can substitute the human element, right? The human voice, like you've talked about. It's I think there's a human touch that only we can bring that will forever be not able to be replicated.
I hope so. I really do.
Yeah. Just going back a little bit, I want to kind of go back to, I guess, what would be maybe the close to the beginning of Halo, but I'm just curious. One video that I come back to maybe once a year is the Apple showcase where they showed the trailer for the very first time. And Steve Jobs walks out and, he's like, this is Halo on the Macintosh or whatever. I'm curious where you were on that day, what was going through your head? Because you carried the weight of like the music and the feel of this thing. And if people don't love the music, or it gives off a vibe that, people are like, oh, it's whatever, then there's a lot resting on this trailer, And I'm just curious, where were you that day? What was the lead up for you like? And then the response after, how are you feeling?
Well, I've told this story a few times, but I'll try to condense it a little bit. On a Friday, Joe Staten said, Marty, we got this amazing opportunity. We're going to be a showcase. We're going to be at Macworld. Steve Jobs going to introduce us next Tuesday. And I'm like, this is Friday. And I'm like, okay, well, what are we going to do? And it's like, we had been, at that point, we were just early process of working on proof of concept Halo on the PC. So all of the work I was doing with sound design was on the PC. And it's like, yeah, we got to put it all on a Mac, have a live demo on the Mac. And I'm like, there's no audio engine right now for the Mac build. So I went to Alex Seropian and I said, Alex, let me, if this is going to be a show, let me do music for it. Let me get some orchestral players and some singers, and let me just do something that's just going to hopefully be impactful. And he says, sure, go do it. And so Saturday, I remember talking to Joe, how long it's going to be. He says, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. And I'm like, Joe, there's a big difference between 2 and 3 minutes. I'm writing right now. I need to understand. And, he gave me the general gist of what was going to happen. And I'm trying to picture it in mind. Because by that point, I had been playing really, really early multiplayer, especially builds of Halo at the studio, driving the Warthog around and jumping out and shooting people and having a good time. We hadn't really worked that hard on, let's say, the aliens and some of that stuff. So I knew that was coming in. So he described what it was going to be. I said, what is the emotions we need? He goes, well, it needs to make people feel ancient, epic, and mysterious, or alien. I forget. I've used both. But ancient and epic, I was like, okay, I'm going to do a Gregorian monk chant, make it kind of easily editable so I can make the piece either shorter or longer, depending on when I fade into the epic part. I'll have some chugging cellos and percussion and strings and take off, and then end again with the monks. So I went to the studio with Mike. I told him what I wanted to do. I had written the melody in the car, and we just started working on it. So that we finished sort of mocking it up on Saturday. Sunday, I copied the parts out for the players who came Monday morning to a studio in Chicago. And by the way, Tuesday was the dress rehearsal for the Wednesday show. But we had Monday morning. I did it, mixed it. The last part I put on was this, that part.
Yeah.
Which I didn't want to do. I wanted one of the professional singers I had hired to do. And they said, what do you want it to be? And I sang that. And they said, well, you should just do it because what you just sang was cool. So
wait, that's your voice in the recording?
What'd you say?
That's your voice in the recording?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really? I'm not saying that because I think you sing that. I'm just like, it doesn't sound like, I don't know, it sounds great.
Thank you. There's a lot of women singers in Halo music that turns out to be me. And if you ever hear what you think is a woman's voice doing something mysterious or cool way up there, it's just, now picture this face and get depressed. Gave it to the guys. I actually gave them 2 versions. I gave them one with that crazy voice in it and one without it, because I was kind of embarrassed of it. And they like, no, we like that. That's cool. So that's the one they took. Yeah. Jason Jones was like, oh, good, I don't have to talk, because at the time, Steve Jobs had said, yeah, you're going to come on stage, and while the demo was playing, you need to explain to everybody everything that's going on. And I remember when I heard that and I gave them the music, I said, guys, look, from a sales, marketing, emotional impact standpoint, the best thing we can do is just play without any talking. Let the music and the visuals just sell this thing. You have a captive audience in a big theater. The lights are down. The screen is big. It's going to make a huge impact. So believe it or not, at the dress rehearsal, they did it that way. And Steve Jobs said, "Oh, yeah, nobody should talk." So he got it immediately. Obviously he's a showman. He gets it. So I felt kind of confirmed that my instincts were right. And then they had, I think Joe and Pete Tamte and Jason Jones flew to New York to do that show. And I was still in Chicago, and I was in my house and watching it on a live stream, which is like, a little post. It was probably, I bet you the screen was this big and, really bad compressed audio. But I could see that it went well. And then I heard the crowd cheering at the end. I heard a lot of clapping and cheering. And I thought, okay, we just did something. We've got a shot at making a popular game that, people will still be playing 6 months from now. So that was the goal.
Or 20 years from now.
Yeah, that was never part of the plan. No one would have ever even thought that that's possible. Games came and went much faster. Nobody plans to make something that sort of becomes an institution or iconic or any of the other words people like to use. You can't plan that. It was, but we did some things right. I mean, I think that first announcement to the world with Steve Jobs being there and Macworld, and it was done the right way. And, one thing I knew that would happen was it wasn't music people were used to hearing on games. And that wasn't that hard for me to do. I mean, like you said, you had already listened to Subterra Core, and we'd done Myth of Fallen Lords. We were already moving into some more dramatic, orchestral, or emotional directions. But we hadn't done it on a large scale before. And somehow it all came together and was, right place, right time. Very happy.
It's amazing. Were there any composers that really, I'm sure you've answered this a million times, but composers that really influenced your journey, and especially specifically Halo, the making of that, I guess the whole soundtrack as a whole?
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't game composers, mostly because even though I liked games a lot, I played a lot of games. For the most part, the production capabilities for games up until that point was just not very, it just wasn't as high fidelity. So once I started getting into games, it was because I saw that the possibility of better fidelity and better production was now possible.
Right.
So even though I loved Koji Kondo and Nobuo Uematsu and Final Fantasy and Zelda, I loved those games and I loved the music in them. I wasn't necessarily influenced by that approach to music in games because that was constrained by what you can do on a Nintendo system, which was very limited. So a lot of things were changing. So my influence I'm actually older than both those guys. So my influences come from the film composers, Jerry Goldsmith and Lalo Schifrin, and, composers like Samuel Barber and Bartok and Stravinsky and Beethoven and Brahms, all the Chopin, all the biggies that I grew up listening to. And then along with that, of course, I was a huge prog rock guy. So Gentle Giant, which nobody knows about, but they have a strong fan base. Genesis, Jethro Tull, Yes, King Crimson,
yeah,
just all those people. So it's a mishmash. It's a mixture in my head of all those influences, and for some reason, it comes out that way.
Yeah. So you're a rocker at heart.
I certainly have some. Well, I mean, I was in a rock band. I was going to be a rock and roll star. I was planning on being, not necessarily rock and roll. It was going to be prog rock, which was very intellectually, these are good musicians, and that whole thing blew up horribly. But I kept at it. I kept at music and got my master's in composition. And I love classic rock, and I mean, Led Zeppelin still gives me chills. So, and working with, Steve Vai, who worked with Frank Zappa, which is just insane because Zappa is a genius, and it's just been a lot of fun.
So were you excited when to make the shift from Halo 1 to Halo 2? I feel like Halo 1 is a lot more orchestral and, voices and instruments, and then boom, Halo 2 drops. We're just shredding right out of the gates. Was that a distinct decision where you're like, all right, we're gonna put the pedal to the metal for this game and take it to the next level? Because if I remember right, was there electric guitar anywhere in the Halo 1 or not?
Yeah, there actually was.
I feel like it was in your face.
Yeah, it was. There's a piece called, I think it's called Rock Anthem for Saving the World on Halo 1. So check it out. That's my guitar player Harry playing the sort of metal guitar on that. So it was something that we had already done. We had put some kind of chunky, screaming, shredding guitar in Halo 1. It wasn't as prevalent. When Nile Rodgers came and said, "Hey, Marty," Nile Rodgers is this amazing producer. He's produced Madonna and his band is called Chic, and he's produced David Bowie and Jeff Beck, and he's just done ridiculous amounts of stuff. And he came to me and said, "I want to help you take things to the next level." And I'm like, "I don't even know what that means." He says, "I can get you Jeff Beck, I can get you Steve Vai." And I'm like, "Okay, well, yeah, fine, get me whoever." So, a few months after that happened, he called me and said, "Hey, bring some tracks down to the studio in Seattle. I'm going to be in town. Steve Vai is going to be in town. Let's get together and work on something." So I didn't know what that was going to be. And that's where the Molnar mix came from, which was just a blast to do. But once that happened and I saw that was a direction we could go, and then we had bands like Incubus and Breaking Benjamin who wanted to contribute. And I'm like, okay, let's see if I can figure out a way to incorporate this into Halo 2. It still has orchestral, still has ambient, it still has quiet. I mean, there's some very cool pieces that come out of Halo 2 that I'm still really proud of. It's not all. What?
2 discs.
2 discs, yeah.
Has it 2 discs?
So, I didn't have a plan ahead of time. Like Halo 1's going to be this way, and Halo 2 is going to be metal, and then Halo 3 is going to be something else. I didn't have that. But once Halo 2 sort of went in that direction, and I could figure out ways of incorporating that sort of organically into the game, then it was then I was a little more conscious of what I wanted to do for Halo 3, because Halo 3 was going to be the conclusion of an epic trilogy. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was okay, if Halo 1 is A and Halo 2 is B, I want to come back structurally to A. So it would be A prime is what I call it. So I brought back a lot of the music compositionally from 1, and then just made it bigger and more live orchestra, and brought a lot of Halo 1 stuff back into Halo 3 to make you feel like you're really wrapping up a trilogy. There you go.
And it feels like that.
Except I added the piano. I added the piano more. I had to get my piano in there for Halo 3, which, by the way, was funny. The first time the marketing department at Microsoft heard gung, 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 gung on the piano, they started laughing, and they're like, "Well, you're not going to do that, are you?"
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding.
I was going to ask how you got to that place where you sat down and you were like, bing, you hit the octaves or whatever. And I'm like, that is brilliant. Because every Halo fan around the world, we all just went, oh my God.
Instant chills.
Instant chills.
Well,
because it's just perfect.
Let me just tell you the strangest thing about that started from the trailer, which came out, what was it, year and a half before the game came out. I mean, it was way early.
Yeah.
It's the "I'm your shield, your sword," the
Yep.
demonic Cortana
This
voice.
is the way
This
the
is the way the
world
world
ends.
ends. Yeah. So that we were working on I was working on a rough cut of that. And one of the things I tend to do is, as I have video up on the screen, I'll watch the video many, many times, and I look for what I consider to be the hit points, the points I want to make sure I hit. So different cuts, different things. And so I thought, well, I'll have, I just need to know orally where the beginning is. And I just hit an octave on the piano, and then something went by and I hit a thing on the piano again. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, that's actually kind of cool. And I thought, that was actually just going to be a sort of a click cue track for me to then do something else. But that I couldn't get rid of that opening E on the piano. It's just stuck with me. And I thought, one of the other things is this is going to be a trailer that shows at E3. There's going to be 50 other trailers that show, and they're all going to recede into the background with the same kind of musical approach. Nobody's going to start with just bong octave piano. And so I thought, well, at a minimum, we'll stand out for that reason. And then once I had the piano thing, I did that sort of heraldic fanfare, piano fanfare, I like to call it. Dung, gang, gang, gang. And I remember actually thinking maybe it was a little cheesy. And so, but when Microsoft marketing people said, well, that's kind of silly, Marty, you're not going to do that, right? That actually forced me to do it. I'm like, okay, maybe it is cheesy, but I'm going to do it just to spite you people, because you have no confidence in my creative ability. And, they were, some of those people were just second guessing Marcus Lato's artistic choices. And, it's hard enough to collaborate with talented people. You don't need other people looking over your shoulder. So I'm like, I'm going to make this work. But even this is a true story. And if you ever interview Marcus Lato, who is the art director on Halo 3 and Halo 1 and 2, and he was the project lead on Reach. If you talk to Marcus, he and I were at the Chinese theater where the trailer was first seen in Hollywood. And we sat down next to each other. And as the audience came filing in, we were sitting there, and he goes, wow, I'm getting kind of nervous. And I said, yeah, me too. What if people laugh? And he goes, what? Like, I didn't even think about people laughing. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. He goes, now I am. I'm thinking about people laughing. And I'm like, well, okay, sorry. But it was a big hit, and the rest is history. So
I feel like that's such a testament to when I think about the call you made at the Apple showcase or at the Macworld, the call you made there, and then the call you made here. And I think it's just a testament, not just you, but the band of brothers that really made the magic of Halo what it is that we couldn't always see as fans.
Right.
But it's like, it's all those simple steps where I think bigger development, like bigger studios, just have a hard time being able to do that now because there are so many moving parts. But like, it's amazing hearing these stories, hearing the magic of like, hey, there was like 70 of us, there was like 100 of us, and we were able to be nimble and make these calls and do like the right move, like that we knew, like follow our instincts, follow our gut. And I think that's where so much of the magic is.
Yeah, I mean, certainly when you look at the successful things, you can see how it was magic, and the relationships and the trust between creative people was really, really important. And the individuals that were involved and the trust we had with each other and the ability to say, well, if Marcus believes this is going to be right artistically, I trust his instincts. And then Marcus would go, well, if Marty thinks piano is the way to go, I trust his instincts. And when you have trust of each other's abilities and instincts, magic can happen. Now, of course, during that period, there was probably a lot of things that failed too, right? But you're absolutely right. I look at modern game development or current game development, and I see these huge teams. And I also see that in some of these publishers, the marketing people and the biz dev people suddenly have way more power than they ever had. None of those people had any influence over Bungie the whole time we were at Microsoft. And we were wholly owned at that time by Microsoft. And I don't know why we were able to be sort of immune from that influence, but I think that's changed. I don't think that's happening anymore. That the teams are too big, the stakes are too high, and some of the biz publishing people have too much power. That's my opinion. Which is nice because I can have that opinion because I'm not trying to work in the industry anymore. So I can say what I say. So there you go.
So with that, would you be open, like if someone approached you, would you be open to composing for another future Halo title? Or are you trying to kind of sunset into different projects?
I've had a rough patch here with dealing with the biz and legal and, you know, intellectual property side of things. So I think I'm kind of on the other side of that industry. And I still am writing music. I want to write music that I enjoy that still gives me the, you know, the chill in the back of the neck. And if anybody wants to listen to it, I'm eager to share it. But I'm not actively looking for film projects or game projects. I think that's in my past. Believe it or not. I think that might be the first time I've said that publicly.
Well, the good news is the internet exists.
Yes.
And we can 100% find your music and listen to it and enjoy it. Is there a place where people right now, you know, can just go and listen to your, I mean, you have all your catalog on Spotify, but as far as like new stuff that you're just cooking up, do you have a SoundCloud or something where you just kind of put out things? I do enjoy the mysterious once a year YouTube video of a nice little 2-minute medley or whatever you put out. But is there any plan to like maybe just put out some things for people to enjoy?
I think I don't have. I have the access to put things out and share with people. I just don't have. I've always said this, which is the thing that has always driven me the most creatively are deadlines. So when somebody says you cannot eat food unless you've hit this deadline and give us this thing, that actually is a big motivator. And I've always been a little bit afraid if I no longer have that as a motivation. If I don't need to do something, like I can eat anyway and feed my family and take vacations, and like I'm on a different plane of existence. Suddenly I find myself having trouble making deadlines for myself. Things start to just drift away. Part of it is I'm still kind of working through some difficult things. I really think that I'm in the middle of a couple things that I'm writing, and I will be sharing them with the fans. Hopefully, it won't be quite as many fans, but maybe a few hardcore fans will say, "Hey, what is Marty writing?" and let's listen to it. So that'll happen. That'll happen in the future.
Oh man, you got a lot of fans.
I appreciate that.
Well, we'll finish up. I want to ask like one more question, and then maybe just throw it to Henry and John if they wanted to say anything, because it is truly an honor to have you. And Henry was saying earlier before you got in the room, like, hey, you're going to be leading a lot of the conversation. It's just an honor to share the same virtual room.
That is almost
Marty.
verbatim exactly what I said.
But before I throw it to them to just say any last words or thank yous, we'll wrap up. My question is, what is your heart for the future of Halo? I know it's not in your hands. It's not in my hands. It's not in the fans' hands. It's completely out of our hands. But your music, like in my mind, and this might be an opinion that other people don't share, in my mind, no Marty, no Halo. Like no music by like you, if that score isn't there, like the game has like 5% of the impact. And that's not to throw shade at what everyone did and all the hard work and everything. but the music just does so much for it. And so my question is, what is your like heart for the future of Halo? We're 20 plus years in. What would you like to see? Like, what's your heart for this Halo and the future of it?
Yeah. The weird thing is I was never someone who got tired of working on Halo. There were some other of the original Bungies who were like, wow, we got to do something different. We got to move on. And of course, there's a whole other story there about how we got out of Microsoft and how we negotiated that deal. And that was long and painful and had repercussions. But I was never, as a creative person, I always loved Halo from the moment I saw it. I loved working on all the Halos I worked on. In hindsight, I think it's some of the best stuff that I ever did, some of the most fun, creative times I ever had, which, of course, makes it more difficult to see different approaches to the Halo universe and different things in the Halo universe. So I don't spend a lot of time. I don't know a lot of stuff that's happened post Bungie. I know who's been doing it, and I know what sort of things have been happening. But I absolutely cannot throw shade or even have an opinion because it was such a personal thing for me and the guys I worked with. But I love Halo, so I don't know. It seems like Halo is. I don't know what the future of Halo is going to be, but I can imagine it's enough of a universe. It's enough of a institution, a cultural thing that it could go away for a long time and still come back, sort of reborn. I think a new approach to Halo could happen in the future. It's I hate to compare it to Star Wars, but I mean, you're going to have people who are convinced that the first 3 Star Wars movies are so far above and better than anything else that's ever happened, or all 6 Star Wars were great, but the new TV series, have dropped the ball, whatever. You're going to have all that, but Star Wars is not going to disappear. Like, there's enough iconic stuff in Star Wars that there's a way to bring it back. Star Trek happened that way. I mean, I think, I was a huge Star Trek fan also, and to see it, reimagined was actually very cool. Not every single Star Trek reimagined was good, but it can survive that. And I think Halo can survive it too. I don't necessarily completely understand some of the decisions that have been made over the past few years by people who are working on Halo. But I'm not close enough to really make any definitive comments on that, but I have hope that sure, Halo will survive and come back, and I don't think you can destroy Halo, sort of the concept of Halo, just by maybe having some less than stellar iterations. So does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that 100%.
All right,
100%.
But I mean, I watch you guys who are lifelong fans, and I see the passion and I see some of the disappointment, and I look at that and say, yeah, I mean, it's not easy just to keep going and making each one better than the last. That is a really, really hard thing to do. And Jamie and I talked about this for a long time. Jamie's like, Jamie says he could never work on Halo again. He's basically said everything he can say in the Halo universe, and he doesn't want to touch that anymore. I, on the other hand, if I'm not really interested in the game industry very much anymore, but who knows? 2-3 years down the road, somebody comes to me and says, hey, we got this idea and we want you to do a new Halo score for this new Halo project. I might actually say, yeah, let me think about that. That seems highly unlikely, but
yeah,
you never know.
Yeah. Hey, it's who knows? Anything's possible. Anything's possible.
It could be you guys. You guys somehow fall into something and, get some venture capital, buy the IP from Microsoft, who's going to, Microsoft says we're going to get out of the game business or whatever. I'm joking, but you never know.
I've I've said multiple times on my live streams and stuff, my Twitter, if I'm Elon Musk, my Twitter is Halo. And I would buy the IP. I'm not buying Twitter.
No.
I'm buying the Halo IP, and I am giving it to the best team in the world, and I'm going to, make it happen. But, one can dream, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where it starts. Starts with a dream. You'll have to get me out of mothballs if you want me, but we'll see.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Henry,
Yeah.
anything you want to ask or just say
sure.
really quick, and then I'll go to John. We'll wrap up.
Like, no pun intended, your music is absolutely legendary. I was at a wedding 2 weeks ago, and it was part of the ceremony. And like, no exaggeration. And so that just stuck out to me. Like, wow, okay, yeah, sure. So like I said earlier, it's just an absolute honor to be in this virtual room with you, and absolutely enthralling to hear these stories about the development of the soundtrack.
Well, thanks. I got a million stories, so who knows?
I love it. John?
I got two things. The first
Sure.
is an apology on behalf of everyone that I've played Halo 3 with. We frequently use the name Bungie in vain while playing that game. Anytime we got frustrated with the battle rifle, without fail, one of us would yell at the top of our lungs, Bungie! So I didn't think I would ever have a chance to apologize for taking Bungie's name in vain, but here we are.
I apologize too. That was often me yelling that during those times.
Same. We didn't know how good we truly had it back then.
Exactly.
We had no clue.
Hindsight.
Well, let me just clarify here. Anything you were frustrated with wasn't me. It was somebody else at Bungie.
It was never the music that we were mad about. So
No.
Right.
Well, the funny thing is, I actually had a lot of influence over many parts of the game. Like I'm the one who killed Sergeant Johnson and stuff like that. So when Johnson died, you might have yelled Bungie, and that wasn't me. So.
So the second thing is I want to share by far like my favorite moment with your music in the Halo series. And it's not any specific moment in the game, but it's like in the Halo 1 days when we'd get together almost every weekend for a LAN party, get all 4 Xboxes, turn them all on, and the theme is just blasting in all the different rooms of the house. That right there is like a core memory and one of my fondest memories. And just wanted to thank you for that. And so many friends and memories made over the years of those in-person LAN parties and getting together. And that theme would just be blasting while we ate pizza and then sat down to just play games all night long. So,
well, you're welcome for that. Let me just say, the main menus on all the Halos was always a really big deal for us. The artists, the art director, the designers, everybody wanted something that would be memorable and cool. So many times, because one thing we realize is that sometimes the main menu stuff is up longer than anything else, because people go back to the menu and they then go have pizza and take a break, but they're not going to turn the game off. They're not going to turn the box off. So I still remember helping to design how that was going to work and make sure that the monk chant always happened at the very beginning. And then there were like 5 or 6 other pieces that would randomly play. And, at first people were like, well, do we really need all this music in this thing? And I'm like, yes, we do. Like, majority of people might never actually hear everything, but at some point it's going to come up and it'll always be kind of setting the mood for what's going to happen. And so I'm just glad to hear that people appreciate that. I get a little bit nostalgic myself for the full package of what we did on Halo 1 through Reach, because the loading screens, the menus, all of that stuff was all of one elegant sort of piece. And I feel like the way the Master Chief Collection works right now, like that is no longer part of the thing. Even our end credits, we were always like very careful to like not be completely finished with the story and give the end credits and then do something at the end. And so, anyway, like none of those things were accidental. We really planned all of that stuff, and so to a certain extent, I kind of miss playing on the 360 and the original Xbox, because that's the way we intended it.
Right.
But there you go. I'm glad you liked it.
Absolutely. Well, the love and the care and the detail, none of it goes unnoticed. And I think most like Halo fans today who grew up through that era, that's one of the biggest like pain points we have, is it feels like there's just a little bit it's just not quite the same, you know, and you feel it. Every little detail adds up. And so it didn't go unnoticed then. It certainly doesn't go unnoticed now. And all your hard work with the Band of Brothers and yourself, it was so appreciated. Marty, I just want to thank you. And I just wanted to say, I know since we've been talking and get the sense, you know, you're maybe stepping back a little bit from the industry or whatever, but I really do think that there are even more great melodies and more great music in your future. And I'm very excited to hear what comes up with your music. I think you have a lot more to give, and I don't think this is by any stretch like the end of the line or like you peaked at Halo. I really do believe that there's a lot more there. So I'm excited to hear it. And I just am grateful that you took the time with us today. And if you're ever in Orange County and you need a place to stay, just let me know.
I love Orange County. Okay, I will. David, Henry, John, this has been a real pleasure for me. So thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
All right. See ya. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
All right. See you later.